The sun had just risen over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the greenish-blue waters of Byron Bay, Australia, and Dylan Reeves was looking forward to a beautiful day of surfing since he was a seasoned wave rider. On top of that, the 29-year-old surfer had been surfing these waters for decades. September 10th, 2024 promised perfect conditions for an almost perfect surf. The tides were high, the waves were crisp, and the beach was nearly empty since the peak hours for surfing had not yet reached. The ocean called to him like it always did. It was like a force that both soothed and challenged him to take it head on. That day, Dylan decided to try out the deeper waters, as he wanted to hunt for bigger waves as soon as they started forming. The soothing sound of crashing waves provided a peaceful backdrop as he positioned himself, scanning the horizon, looking for the next wave to ride. As he patiently waited, a school of fish darted beneath him, shimmering in the early light. Everything felt perfect, like it always had on days like this. But there was something different that day. An unsettling energy lingered in the air, one that made Dylan feel slightly off, though he couldn't quite pinpoint why. His instincts triggered, but he tried his best to calm himself and went on with what he had started. After a few minutes, the first wave arrived, and Dylan did not waste any time. He caught the wave and carved gracefully along its face, feeling the rush of adrenaline as he danced with the ocean. Being a surfer, moments like this made Dylan feel like his life was worth living and made him forget about everything else. But as he paddled back, getting ready for the next ride, he noticed something peculiar, a faint ripple in the water, far to his right, moving steadily closer to his position. At first, he thought it was just a dolphin, something common in these waters. If it was a dolphin, then he had nothing to be concerned about. But then the ripple disappeared, as if whatever had caused it had suddenly vanished into the deep waters. Although he told himself to stay calm, Dylan's heart beat faster. He looked around, seeing nothing out of the ordinary. The waves were still rolling in, the ocean stretching endlessly in every direction. Observing this, he thought that it was probably just his imagination playing tricks on him. After all, he'd been surfing in the area 1,000 times without encountering any dangerous situations. On top of that, sharks were a rare find in this area. And even when they were spotted, they were docile and did not attack humans. But this was not any other day. As he paddled to catch another wave, the unsettling feeling returned, stronger this time. The water seemed eerily still around him. The usual ocean sound suddenly muted. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw it. A dark shadow was moving with purpose just beneath the surface, larger than anything he'd ever encountered before. His heart slammed in his chest as the reality of the situation hit him. It was a shark, a big one. And it was aggressively coming straight for him. As anyone would expect, panic set in, and the first thing his instincts told him was to swim away as fast as he could. But Dylan knew better than to thrash or make any sudden movements. He reminded himself that sharks are curious creatures, and any sudden movement would only draw its attention to him. Just because it was approaching didn't mean it would attack. Knowing this, he began paddling slowly, trying to maintain his composure as he moved toward the shore, his eyes darting back and forth, searching for the shark. Then it disappeared again, as if to taunt him, or maybe it was just passing by. This was something Dylan did not intend to stick around and find out. For a few seconds, full of uncertainty and suspense, Dylan scanned the water but could not see the shark. His pulse thundered in his ears as he tried to figure out where it could have gone. Just as he allowed himself to breathe, something unexpected happened. A violent jolt from beneath his board sent him flying a few meters in the air before landing in the water. The impact was so sudden, so forceful, that he barely had time to react before he was plunged into the depths. The ocean roared around him, disorienting him as he kicked wildly to get back to the surface. Panic set in as he realized what had happened. The shark had struck his board, and it was thirsty for blood. Following this, Dylan swam to the surface, gasping for air, and immediately scanned the water, looking for the attacking shark. It was hard for him to see it due to the deep color of the ocean water. He could only see it if it swam with its dorsal fin exposed to the surface, or when he looked for it inside the water. But even then, he could not see too far, meaning that if he could manage to spot it when looking in the water, the shark had already gotten too close. This was not a good position to be in. When still looking for the shark in panic, a few meters away, he spotted his surfboard bouncing uselessly in the waves, but it was not yet safe enough to get comfortable. Out of nowhere, the shark appeared again. Its massive dorsal fin sliced through the water as it circled him, watching him closely, waiting to attack again. Being a seasoned surfer, Dylan tried to remain calm, thinking about anything he could do to get himself out of that situation. But he was not a faster swimmer than the shark. and the universe was about to give him another big slap in the face. This was no ordinary shark. It was a big fish, over 15 feet long, with sharp teeth and bad intentions. And in that terrifying moment of clarity, Dylan realized that the shark wasn't just curious. It was hunting, and he didn't stand a chance against it. What could he do now? The shark surged forward, its dark eyes fixed on him as it closed the distance with terrifying speed. Dylan tried to swim toward his board, but the shark was faster. Just as it reached him, it changed direction to the side, brushing against him with its sandpaper-like skin. The force of the brush knocked him off balance, and he knew the next strike wouldn't be so merciful. As if the shark was playing with its food, what had started as a graceful, beautiful day had turned totally upside down for Dylan. Yet, that was not the end of it. In an interesting twist of fate, something unexpected happened. A pod of dolphins appeared out of nowhere, racing toward Dylan and the shark. They swarmed the area, leaping from the water in synchronized movements, as if to create confusion around the predator, and buy Dylan some time to escape. In these waters, dolphins were known to fend off sharks, and for a brief moment, it seemed they might save him from being the shark's breakfast snack. For a minute, the shark hesitated. It circled the dolphins like it was calculating its next move, while assessing whether they would pose a threat. At this time, the water was churning with chaos as the dolphins swam in tight formations, trying to keep the hungry shark distracted. This was so confusing for Dylan. He floated in the middle of it all, barely able to process what was going on. His thoughts rushed, trying to figure out a way to get out of there, as his brain had already gone into survival mode. But just as quickly as the dolphins had arrived at his aid, they scattered. Were they abandoning him? Despite the dolphins' efforts, the shark was not fazed by the distraction. Its predatory instincts were too strong, and it was too hungry to be swayed for long. With a terrifying lunge, the shark surged toward him again. This time, there was no time to escape. Seeing that he had a few seconds to try and escape or be devoured by the shark, Dylan braced himself. He was kicking with all his strength when something slammed into him hard. For a second, he thought it was the shark, but the blow came from the side. His surfboard, carried by a wave, had been hurled back toward him, striking him square in the chest. The force of the impact knocked Dylan a bit far underwater again, but it saved him. The shark had missed its mark, and Dylan, propelled by a surge of adrenaline in flight mode, swam desperately toward his board. He grabbed it, pulling himself on top as the next wave crested. In a last-minute effort to try and save his life, Dylan paddled furiously toward the shores, but the shark could not let him off the hook that easily. It followed him fast, its fin cutting through the water like a knife, but it was a losing battle for the hungry predator. The universe was on Dylan's side. The waves were pushing him faster and faster toward the beach. He had gotten lucky. As soon as he touched the sand, he ran as fast as his feet could take him and collapsed on the beach, panting and shaking with exhaustion. After catching his breath, he looked back to see if the shark was still hunting him, but it was gone, and the ocean became calm again, as if nothing had happened. The beach was still empty, except for Dylan and a lone seagull that circled above. If asked, this would be the day that Dylan would never forget. A day when the ocean's serene beauty had turned into an instant nightmare. The story of Dylan's narrow escape spread fast, serving as a chilling reminder to surfers and swimmers alike that beneath the beautiful surface, the ocean is always unpredictable, and sometimes even the calmest waters can hide the most significant dangers.